Hey, welcome back to Laser Engraving 911. So on today's episode, we're going to talk about laser fumes and all the different ways that you can extract those fumes. We're going to get into it. We're going to talk about inline fans. We're going to talk about fume extractors. We're going to talk about big blower fans. So if that sounds like something you've been wanting to learn about, then stick around, because that's what we're getting into on Laser Engraving 911.
Hey kids, how's it going? So let's go ahead and talk about fume extractors in your laser workshop or your laser room or wherever that's at. So there's a lot of different types of fans for extracting your fumes from your laser machine, and that laser machine can be a CO2 laser, it could be a Glowforge, it could be an Epilogue, it could be a Trotec, it could be a Thunder laser. It really doesn't matter what the machine is. All laser engraving machines need to have fume extraction and good fume extraction. And there's a right way to do it and there's a wrong way to do it. A good laser exhaust system is one that's quiet, that removes all the smoke and the odors, and it gets the dust away from your laser head, and it will improve your engraving and cutting quality and reduce all the residue and the buildup inside of your machine when it's done right. And those are really important. You don't want to have excess fumes and dust and other particles in your machine. It'll ruin your machine. So if you have a really weak exhaust system, or you have a shop vac hooked up to your laser unit, which I've seen some people doing, it's going to eventually be bad for your laser machine. So what we want to talk about today is how to set up, how to pick a fan for your exhaust system, whether that's a fume extractor, an industrial inline fan, a quieter, powerful inline fan, or, a blower fan. I guess both of these right here are blower fans, and we'll get into that in a second. So as you can see, I've taken hours here to draw this highly technical diagram. Basically, I just wanted to keep it super simple because I feel like, fume extraction and getting the fumes out of your laser doesn't need to be complicated. And if you read a lot of articles, there's a lot of information about CFMs and static pressures and volumes and come into play. But most of us are just have one or two machines or one machine, and we just need to extract the fumes and the smoke and the odors and get them out of the shop completely. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So you've got your laser machine. And all laser machines are going to come with an exit port on the back. Usually those are about 4 inches, I've noticed, on all the different models. Some larger bed machines are going to have double ports. I know my Epilogue, my 32 by 20 Epilogue has 2 ports. So it has a lot of space inside. It's a pretty big machine, and it needs a lot of CFM to exhaust the whole machine properly. So you've got your machine and then you've got your ducting. So, a lot of the articles and information, they recommend that you use metal ducting, and there's nothing wrong with that. Metal ducting is the best type of ducting to use for CO2 laser machines. And that's because it doesn't build up any static charge, and it's fireproof for the most part. So ideally you want to use metal ducting, and I know that that can be really can be complicated if you don't know how to work with sheet metal, and it's more expensive, but what I use is a fire retardant flexible rubber ducting for all my units, and I've been doing this for 9 years now, and I've never had an issue. It's really easy to use. You can turn it and put it wherever you need. You can mount it on the wall and get it where you need it to be. I'm going to put a link in the description below on the type of ducting that I use and where I get it. So if you want to use that link and get yourself some, it's not terribly expensive and it's really easy to use. So in this diagram, I'm not saying that you have to use metal ducting. These are just the graphics that I was able to find to use for this simple diagram. So you've got your exit fume duct, whatever that is, it's going to come out. And one important thing to note is that you want to try to keep the distance down from where it's going to exit the building, wherever that is, your house, your shop. You want to try to keep that as minimal as possible. You don't want to have a super long pipe that's going to drop your airflow. And also some things to keep in mind is you want to avoid having a lot of bends in your pipe or 90-degree turns. That is also going to drop your airflow down. And a common mistake that a lot of folks make when they first get their laser system is they put their ventilation, their exhaust fan, like right next to the laser, and they, it goes in here and then it goes out here, and then they run their pipe outside the building. What you actually want to do, if at all possible, and it's not horrible if you do this, if you have this right here, but ideally what you want to do is you want to put your fan as close to the exit of the building as possible. So you want to go out of the machine into the input of the fan, and then the output should be as close to the exit of the building as possible. And that is because it creates a stronger vacuum in the pipe, and it helps remove things more efficiently. Also, whether you decide, ideally you want to vent out the highest point of the building if at all possible, and I know that that's not always going to be possible because you may be on the bottom floor and you don't want to run a pipe through the multi parts of the of your building and through one room and into the next room. If you're in your garage, though, which is kind of what this drawing is simulating, if you at all possible can go through the ceiling and into the attic and then out the roof and get a nice roof cap on so nothing can fall back down in there, it's going to be ideal for you to vent out the highest point in the roof, wherever that is. If you can get it up here and vent up there, that would be ideal. So when the fumes and the smoke and everything comes out, the wind is going to, kind of disperse that and not cause an issue with going back into some of the windows of your home or disturbing your neighbors that may live right next door to you. So let's talk about a situation and some of the materials that give off the most offensive smells. So let's say that it's just not possible to vent out the roof, and you've got to vent outside, obviously. Some things to keep in mind when you have to vent outside and you can't go all the way to the top of the roof. And even if you can go to the top of the roof, you may have another story up there with windows, so this is relative as well. When you're venting these fumes and smoke and vapor outside, be aware that those fumes with the wind outside can blow, and they can hang around, and they can go back into cracks in the window. The smoke can, travel around. It could go over to, your neighbor's yard. It can go in the window. It could get into an open door. So just keep that in mind when you're venting outside. And while that may not be such a big deal for regular wood smoke, like if you're just engraving some wood and stuff. You are going to find that it is a big deal when you're engraving and cutting acrylic, rubber. Some of these rubbers that are made for laser engraving, like stamps and things like that, the rubber for that, have a horrific smell. And leather, one of the worst smelling things to laser engrave and cut. The smell from burning leather is basically the smell of burnt hair times 1,000, and it just permeates everything. So keep that in mind when you're venting outside. You want to make sure that those vapors aren't going back into your house and permeating other rooms, because they'll linger for quite a while. And I'm sure some of you have found that out the hard way. But acrylic, rubber, leather, in my experience, those are the worst and most offensive smelling vapors and smoke that my shop produces. So I live in a multi-story house, and my shop is in the basement. And what I've chosen to do, because my wife is very sensitive to smells, and I don't want any of these acrylic vapors or rubber or leather or any kind of stuff getting back into my home, is I went ahead and invested in a fume extractor. So a professional fume extractor has a multi-layered filters that the vapors and smoke goes through, including a activated charcoal carbon filter at the last stage that mitigates almost 90% of the odors, no matter what I'm cutting. And I use that machine in line just like a regular exhaust fan, and it goes out of my laser into the fume extractor, out of the fume extractor, and out the house. And when I use this, there is practically no smell coming out of the unit. They are very effective at mitigating harmful vapors and smells, and I highly recommend that you look into getting one if you're in a situation where getting those odors from these materials is not an option, and you can't risk it coming back into the house, or you live in close proximity, like condo complex or townhomes, and you still want to operate your home-based business, but you can't be chuffing out these acrylic fumes and vapors into your neighbor's kitchen window. So let's go ahead now and talk about the different kinds of exhaust fans and their power levels, and what I would recommend that you use for your machine. All right, so let's talk about a couple of fans that are exhaust fans that are out there for your laser system. So whatever the recommended CFM exhaust is for your system, you always want to make sure that you go above that. Never get anything that is exactly whatever the manufacturer recommends. Always try to get something stronger than what they recommend. And the reason for that is that they're usually recommending the bare minimum to pair with their exhaust system. Why that is, I don't know. Maybe they want to keep the overall price down. Who knows? But what I've found over the years is that even if you have a medium size or a larger size laser, it's always best to just go with the strongest industrial fan that you can possibly go. Your laser will thank you for it. It will be extracting and evacuating those fumes and vapor faster than they can be created. That's what you want. It will keep the inside of your laser machine cleaner, and it will also have enough power left over if you have like something like a downdraft or a vacuum table. So just keep that in mind when you're shopping for an exhaust. Look at what the manufacturer recommends and then try to get something that's double that. That way, you'll always be good. I had to learn that the hard way by, getting the bare minimum or getting a laser that was shipped with the bare minimum. A lot of the overseas China lasers, they're going to come with something like this here. And I've had one of these before, this blower fan exhaust setup. And they're still being sold today as an exhaust system for CO2 lasers. And what I have to say about this particular unit, if it looks like this, is they are extremely loud and rattly compared to some of these other options that you see here before. And when I mean loud, I mean like hard to concentrate loud, like stupid loud. So if you can avoid getting one of these, even though they have the high CFM, if you can avoid getting one of these, they're hard to mount on the wall or anywhere. They make a lot of noise. I don't really think they're great for inside of a laser engraving shop. And I would recommend, if you have one of these, you should consider upgrading to something else. I don't even know what make and model these are, but they're still going around, and I know China loves to ship them with their systems. So if you do get one of these, go ahead and try it out if that's all you got, but just know that there's quieter things out there that you could invest in that will give you more peace of mind. Some of the newer models, like the AC Infinity Cloud 9 series, they have an S6 and an S8. These are fantastic. This unit right here is extremely quiet, easy to mount, electronic speed control, so you get to vary how much power you want depending on what the job is, even though most of the time I just keep mine at full tilt boogie. These are great, and I'm going to list links to these fans below in the description, so if you want to pick one of these up, they're great. The bare minimum I would say for any laser machine is going to be 400 CFM. I would consider this unit to be great for like fiber lasers, where you don't need too much, but you don't want too little. This would be the S6 would be a great setup for that. The S4, the 4-inch model, is just not enough CFM for a CO2 laser, so I wouldn't recommend getting with that. I would definitely look at the S6 and the S8, which are it just blew me away how quiet they are and how effective they are. So those are two great quiet units, and the cost on them is really not that bad. If you are interested in getting maximum CFM, even on, you hook this VivoSun 8-inch up to a medium or larger laser engraving machine, you're definitely going to be pleased. It's a little bit louder than the AC Infinity Cloud line, but this unit right here is a beast. It can evacuate all fumes and smoke and dust faster than it can be created. This is a great unit. It is a little bit louder, but we just talked about how important fume extraction is. So this unit is also a great choice for an inline fan, and overall it's surprisingly quiet compared to like this hunk of junk over here. And then of course there's fume extractors. More of a utility machine in itself rather than just an exhaust fan, because it's also mitigating all the smells. And the one we're going to talk about here in a second is 500 CFM, and it is extremely powerful. I have this one hooked up to my Epilog Edge, and I have some footage of it that I'll show you in a little bit, and it's just you can't even see the smoke when it's being created. It's just it's just getting evacuated so fast. It's kind of mind blowing. So it would also work on my Epilog M2 Fusion, but it's really really pushing the limit there. But it would work really well with the bigger laser as well. So overall, if you're wondering about CFM and what kind of strength you should get, don't get anything less than 400. And if you really want to put on a good show and make sure that your laser is clean and all that stuff is getting evacuated at ridiculous speeds, get something that's like 700 CFM or higher and you will be extremely pleased. Just keep in mind that you always want to kind of, if the manufacturer has a listing of how loud or how quiet, how loud is the unit, because that could get annoying after a while if you've got a really high-powered industrial inline fan, but it's so loud that you can't even talk in the shop to anybody or hear your music or listen to a podcast because it's just so crazy loud, like this thing over here. To keep that in mind, you want to be comfortable in your shop. You don't want to have some giant machine running all the time where you have to wear earmuffs because it's so loud. So that's what I have to say about my recommendations for laser engraving shops, whether it's work at home or in a commercial space. I think these units right here, these 3 units right here, and right here are fantastic. I'll put links below where you can get all these different units. All right, so I think now it's time to take a closer look at the fume extractor that I use here in my shop and kind of get into the nitty gritty. And we'll go ahead and I'll get on camera and we'll talk about that a little bit. All right, so let's talk about fume extractors and how they can be used in your shop. So there's different levels of fume extractors. There's different price ranges of fume extractors. And most of the time, the higher your cost for a fume extractor unit, the initial cost, and the filters, the more efficient it will be at completely removing all odors and all fumes before it gets exhausted out the back. So keep that in mind when you're looking at fume extractors, that there are different levels of fume extraction. This unit that we're going to be looking at here today is by Pure Air Fume Extraction. This unit was sent to me for demo purposes and to run it through its paces, and I've been using it for a few months now, and it does a fantastic job at mitigating almost 80% of all odors that I can throw at it. Now, this is what I would consider a budget range fume extractor. It is not considered a high-end fume extractor. And what I mean by that is by using this kind of mid-range, budget range fume extractor, when you're cutting really odorous material, mainly acrylic, leather, and some rubbers, you're still going to want to make sure that this gets vented outside. But the difference between just piping that stuff through an inline fan or an industrial blower fan and running it through this unit before it goes outside are night and day. So this unit, by the time anything, whether I'm cutting acrylic, whether I'm cutting leather, whether I'm cutting rubber, or anything that puts off a really strong odor, this thing is going to do an amazing job at filtering out any odor. And I mean, you have to get right up to the vent outside to even know that there's some kind of smell coming out. This fume extractor will do that. Now, can you take this unit to trade shows and be engraving or cutting that material or cutting wood in the trade show and not have it venting outside, but just having it vent in the room? Is it that good? No. This unit is not that as good as, say, this unit right here, which is another fume extractor I have, which is a BOFA unit. And this unit is probably 3 times more expensive than this unit. But you could take this unit and be engraving and cutting things in a trade show. And by the time it filters all the smell, the VOCs, the smoke and everything, what comes out the back is, 95, 96% all odor, all vapors, all smoke removed. But, like I said, this unit costs 3 times as more as this unit right here. So now that I've given you kind of an idea of what
that not all fume extractors are equivalent, and that there's different case uses for them, different ways that they can be applied and benefit you. Let's go ahead and get into this unit right here and talk a little bit more about how it works. And then you can decide if that's something that you have an application where this unit could be really beneficial to you. And we'll talk about all those applications when we're done getting into the meat and potatoes of this unit when we're all finished. All right, so we're going to take a look at this unit by Pure Air Tech. Like I said, this unit was sent to me for evaluation, and so far it's been a really great mid-range unit, and it has completely eliminated any odors that I pump outside, no matter what I'm engraving or cutting, from offending either my family or my neighbors right next door. So I can feel confident using this unit that even if I'm cutting those materials that I talked about, acrylic, leather, rubber, stamp rubber, some of the worst stuff. When my laser pumps all of its fumes and smoke through this, and then I vent this outside, there is practically no odor. And that is why I find such a benefit to this unit. So this is the PA800 FS from Pure Air Tech. And this is a mid-range budget, fume extractor. And I thought it would be cool if we kind of opened it up and I let you take a look at it and kind of explain what's going on there. And it's pretty cool. I'm always kind of fascinated by these things. So inside of here, we've got a series of filters. We've got a little, kind of filter for catching any heavy debris. So if any heavy debris came out the back of your laser for any reason, it would stop it from, going through. So we've got like this pad here. Then we've got the initial multi-stage filter right here, and it comes with this little Allen key. And let's go ahead and take a look at that. So you can see this is a deep pleat filter, equivalent to a HEPA filter, and it's got multiple stages in it. And I'm not going to actually open it up, but this filter does a great job at removing the actual, the actual particles that are in the smoke, or whatever that it is that you're engraving or cutting, are going to get caught in here. Not necessarily the smell, which is created by the VOCs. That's actually going to happen in the final layer before it gets exhausted out the top. So it's really easy to take out and re-put in these filters. You just slide them in, and then you use your Allen key to lock it in place. And the reason that you need to lock it in place is because there is a gasket up here, and that filter smashes up into that gasket, so it's nice and airtight all the way before it gets ejected out the top. And then this final stage right here is the activated carbon charcoal filter, and it is heavy. It is really heavy. Most all these fume extractor systems are going to have a final stage filled with some kind of activated charcoal. Some companies are going to use more exotic activated charcoal, and other ones are going to use just basic activated charcoal, which actually does a really good job. So this filter is about 35 pounds, and that's because it is filled to the top with activated charcoal. And I'll throw a picture up of what that looks like. I've got some in my hand there, and so you can see what it looks like. So all the vapors and the fumes go through the first stage filter, then finally they go through this pile of activated charcoal carbon, and that is what's actually going to get rid of the odors, the VOCs, all that stuff that's offensive, that can stink up your shop, that's bad for you to inhale. This is the part that's going to take care of that. So it goes through that final stage. We'll go ahead and lock that back in. And then it comes out the output, which then you connect another hose to and run that outside. So let's go ahead and take a look at the other side, and I'll show you what the back looks like. All right, so here we are on the back side. So I had to do a little adapting coming from my epilogue, because most laser engravers, most CO2 laser engraving machines are going to have probably like a 4 or 5 inch exhaust, and this unit actually came with a 6-inch input. But the company has let me know that once you order from them, you can actually request any size input you want. If you want it to be 4-inch or 5-inch or 6-inch, they'll go ahead and make you one at no additional charge. So I did some adapting. So this is coming right here. This is coming from my epilogue, and it is going into the unit. And like I said, it's going from the bottom when the fumes come in all the way through those filters, and then finally it's coming out this end, and this is my exhaust hose that I have coming, and that is going to my vent which goes outside. We've just basically got your, it runs on standard 120 power. It does have the ability to hook up a remote to it, which is pretty cool. So if you want to have it in line to anytime you turn on your laser, it automatically kicks on. That's pretty cool. That's a nice little feature. And then that's it for the backside. Now let's go ahead and take a closer look at the control panel at the top, because that's pretty cool as well. All right, so here's the control panel. It's a pretty basic unit, but what's really nice about this, and this will help you extend the life of your filters, which we'll get to here in a few minutes about replacement costs and filters and when to replace them and stuff like that, is you go ahead and turn on the unit, and you can hear that's about mid power right there. Just go ahead and listen to that for a second. It's really not that bad. This unit is very, very quiet. And I actually have one of the hoses off the back right now. So that's actually with one of the hoses off. So I don't know if you can see the display here. Let's see if I can get into that. No, you can't really see the display. Well, that sucks, doesn't it? Yeah, you can't really see the display. Anyway, if you could see the display, which you can't, it's got the RPMs that the motor is running, and it has basically plus or minus speed control. So you can just use it very minimally. I don't know if you can hear that. Or you can crank it all the way up to maximum, which is really impressive. And I'm gonna list all the specs of this machine in the description of this video, and also a link to where you can go and get even deeper into the specs of this unit, because it is really impressive. So this is about halfway. You can listen to the sound. We can go full tilt boogie. And that's like maximum, the highest it'll go. And that is actually way more than I need in my Epilogue Fusion Edge. But man, when I'm cutting and engraving and I've got this much exhaust going, it is so good at extracting those fumes away from my laser head. And the vacuum table works like a dream. I could even use this unit in my larger Epilogue M2 Fusion and it would do just fine. So let's talk about when you would need a fume extractor and when you could just be fine with some of the other exhaust fans that we talked about. So I think that this kind of fume extractor from Pure Air Tech has its place when you work in a confined area, or you're trying to have your laser engraving business or laser cutting business in an area where you are in close proximity to your neighbors, or a situation with, if you were in a condo, if you were in a school type setting where you had some CO2 lasers set up, some projects in a makerspace for the students, and you couldn't just exhaust out the window,
because it's blowing into the classroom right next door, this would be where this unit would come in extremely handy. If you're going to be a full service shop and those are some of the materials that you're going to be cutting, then you're definitely going to want to find a way to filter out the odors. Now let's go ahead and talk about the consumables, because fume extractors do have a consumable, and that is the filters. So periodically, you're going to have to replace the filters. There's usually 2 filters on these type of laser engraving fume extractors that you're going to have to replace. That's the HEPA type filter, the deep pleat filter, and then of course the activated charcoal filter, which I showed you on the top. And the cost to replace them is just going to be a cost of doing business if this is a type of unit that you need in the type of business that you have. And you can just put that money aside knowing that every 6 to 9 months to a year, you're going to have to replace both of those filters. And usually these machines will let you know when it's time to replace it, because they'll sense that the airflow is being restricted and let you know that it's time to replace the filters. You'll notice that the machines will start to get a little bit louder. They'll sound like they're starting to work a little bit harder. And you'll start to notice that maybe if you walk outside, or if you have one where you're venting inside, that you're starting to get faint sense of odors finally coming through, because the filters are all used up and they're full of all those particles. I haven't used this one long enough to have to replace the filters on it, but they're very affordable. On the BOFA machine, I usually replace my filters once a year. And I am not doing a lot of cutting. I do cut throughout the year, but that is not my primary business in my laser engraving business. I do mostly engraving and about 25% cutting throughout the year. I can't speak for other units because I don't have all the pricing of what their filter replacement cost is, but it's something that you should consider before buying a fume extractor. How much are the replacement filters, and are you going to be doing a lot of cutting? Or are you going to be doing a lot of engraving? Or are you going to be doing mostly engraving and a little bit of cutting? Mostly engraving and a little bit of cutting, you're not going to have to replace your filters, especially if you get a mid or higher range machine, probably more than once a year. If you're doing cutting and a lot of cutting, and you're just creating tons of smoke and tons of vapor all the time, you may find yourself replacing the filters twice a year, or even more if your business volume is even higher. So that's something to talk with the manufacturer about of the fume extractor that you're thinking about getting, and because they probably have way better data than I do on their machine and how often their customers are replacing their filters. It's really important that you understand that, just like in my last video with the different speeds of the lasers, not all of these are going to have enough suction to deal with the size of your laser, or they're not going to be able to get rid of all the odors or all the particles that are coming out of your laser. I just did a search over the last couple of days of just generally fume extractor for laser engraving machines, and the stuff that I saw come up is pretty horrific compared to this unit and that unit right there. And a good rule of thumb is if you have any kind of a decent size CO2 laser, even this little 24 by 12 epilogue edge here, not a huge bed here, a 60 watt machine, if you're trying to hook some kind of fume extractor up to that's, I would say, less than $1,500, maybe, anything less than that, don't be shocked when it doesn't do a really good job at extracting those fumes and you just bought a really expensive fan. When you get up into the 2,500 and up range, then you start to get units like this, and when you get up into the $6,000 to $10,000 range, you start to get units like this right here, where you don't even have to vent outside. So just keep that in mind. I want everybody to be safe out there. I definitely don't want any of you to think that you're buying something because it's a great deal and it was $500 and it's got a thin layer of activated charcoal filter. That is not going to get rid of any of the smells of the acrylic or leather or anything that we talked about today. So just be on the lookout, folks. Do your research. Be smart.
All right, well, that pretty much wraps it up for fume extraction and exhaust systems for laser engraving machines here on Laser Engraving 911. If you made it this far, thanks for hanging out with me. I really appreciate all my subscribers, all the people that are involved in my channel. It means a lot to me, and it's definitely motivated me to make more videos. If you want to check out any of the stuff that I talked about in the video, I've listed links down below in the description. Just expand the description and you'll see links to everything that I recommended or that I talked about in the video, and you can go check those out and see if those going to be right for you. And also, if you liked what you saw here on the video and you want to check out some more, make sure you check out one of my other videos right here. So until next time, we'll see you back here on Laser Engraving 911.